I'm Jenny Beale. I'm Assistant Learning Officer at Sunderland Museum and Winter Gardens, working for Tyne and Wear Museums. And I'm just undergoing a little project. I'm travelling by train from Sunderland to Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and it's going to take about 6 weeks. And this is the first day of the trip, so I'm very excited. At the moment, we're heading to Newcastle Central Station, and we're going to be getting the train from there down to London and then catch the Eurostar. So we'll actually hit Belgium by the end of today. So we'll have travelled through, 3 countries? And so we'll tick them off the list.
The reason for this journey by railway was to celebrate the reopening of Monk Wearmouth Station Museum, a museum for travel and transport located in Sunderland, northeast England.
We've just arrived here in London King's Cross, and we're about to go off and find the Underground and get tickets and get organised for that. We're just here in this fantastic building for trains, really, and it's designed in the way so the Victorian trains, when they had the masses of steam and smoke, it would all go up into the roof, so it's really high in the ceilings and it just looks amazing. So this is like our first proper stop on the route. Well, it's been one heck of a busy day. I can't believe at 6 o'clock this morning I was getting up in my flat. Oh, I just had a nightmare in the Eurostar. Totally lost my passport and my ticket. So I think everyone was quite amused, and eventually I found it. John found it and we got through it. So made it onto the train. That would have been a nightmare if I'd forgotten that. Oh my God, wouldn't have had a passport. Slightly important where we're going. Border crossings, visas. Ah! We've decided that we had to get off at Lyon because it's the only stop that we could have made in France. And we didn't want to miss fantastic French radio, fantastic French food, and also to collect something from France, because you can't pass all the way through France and just ignore it. It's just not on. So we have. We've had a lovely meal, just had an omelette and chips, frites, and we're just chilling for a little bit before having a look around the town.
The next stop was Brussels, where we only had a short few hours to explore. So, on the recommendation of the cafe owner, where we'd eaten our breakfast, we went to the Grand Place. It's one of the most beautiful market squares in Europe. As we left Belgium and travelled into Germany, I was really impressed by the style and the punctuality of the trains.
Guten Tag, welcome to Cologne. And we just got off the Thalys train from Brussels, and we actually had to get a later train because we missed the first one. So that wasn't very good, really. But it was good in some ways because we had a bit of time in the station. I was able to go around and get a few postcards and send those off. So shortly we're going to go and find the ticket. So we're going to have to get the phrase book out and have a little think about the little phrases like how do you buy tickets, that sort of thing.
It was a strange feeling to travel through so many countries so quickly. My head was starting to spin, and whenever we stopped, my body felt like it was still in motion. I was looking forward to seeing Wuppertal though, which has an unusual suspended monorail.
We're on the Wuppertal suspended railway going through the centre of Wuppertal. It's fantastic. It sort of sways from side to side, a little bit like a ride at Alton Towers. It's just gorgeous. The sun's come out. I'm really, really enjoying this. It's just like being on a fantastic ride.
Wuppertal town centre reminded me very much of the shopping streets in the northeast. post-war architecture with lots of small shops. But the internet cafe was totally new to me, with Lara Croft and Spider-Man models watching us drink our tea. As we left Wuppertal, I felt full of anticipation about our next stop, Berlin, the capital city of Germany. I'd never visited before, but I'd heard about the vibrant culture and art scene, and of course its incredible history. I was 15 years old when the Berlin Wall came down, and I will never forget those images on TV of people celebrating together.
Day 4. We are in a very rainy Berlin. We're standing in the famous Norman Foster dome at the Reichstag, the very top of the building, the domed roof. And you can walk in this sort of circular walkway all the way up to the top and get a view 360 degrees of Berlin. The mirrors that are behind us here lead down to a glass dome, and you can actually see down where the German Parliament sit, so that the voting public can actually look down on the politicians instead of having to look up to them in some kind of ivory tower. Look down on them actually doing the work on their behalf, which is rather nice.
Our next stop was the Berlin Transport Museum, where we were kindly escorted round by curator Ulrich on his day off.
Is it? What's that? We'll see what we find when we go around that time, so let you know what happens.
Later that afternoon, we were back at Berlin train station. It was incredible, with trains and platforms on so many levels and thousands of people. So far, I had already visited the countries that we'd been passing through, and I was familiar with their languages and food and customs, but from then on, it was a journey into unknown territory, Eastern Europe and beyond.
I'm just looking at the safety sign up here for the emergency brake, and it's in 4 different languages, and the British one says, emergency brake, in case of danger, strongly to pull for the handle. Every unnecessarily usage will be sanctioned. There you go, don't mess with the emergency brake. Yeah, we're moving into continental weather now. So the further and further we get on the trip, we're going to be moving further into Europe, into the continent. So the influence of the sea and the mild air that you get by the sea, especially in Sunderland, is reducing all the time. So it's just getting colder and probably drier as well, I would think.
After a night in the hostel, I was keen to collect some objects from Poland, so the Olympic Stadium market was a great place to explore. I brought a Polish football hat and a metal-painted cat. This let me practice haggling over prices, which I needed to master. The city was full of contrasts, and after eating breakfast with impoverished Armenians at the market, we watched ice skaters dance to classical music in the afternoon.
This morning we were at the Warsaw Uprising Museum, and we were very kindly taken around there by a guide. They basically described how Polish people during the Second World War, they were under Nazi occupation, and there was this huge underground resistance type movement which meant that they could make their own stamps, printing presses, ammunition. It was really, really moving. Last night we went up to the top of the Marriott Hotel to look down across the whole city, and you could just see all the lights and the neon, and it was such a fantastic view.
The Hero Fortress Memorial at Brest in Belarus took my breath away. It's one of the most important Soviet war monuments, marking the fierce resistance to the German invasion in 1941. One sculpture is of a fallen soldier stretching out to reach a cup of water. The troops in the fortress were forced into starvation and thirst by the siege, but they never gave up, as the bullet-scarred church reminds us all of what took place. Across the road, the atmosphere was gratefully lightened. The men at the Brest Railway Museum were so friendly and proud of their trains. They let us climb aboard and play with the controls, even letting us try on some train guard hats.
One of the things we've noticed since arriving in Belarus, and probably since leaving Poland really, is how much more difficult it's become to communicate. At least in Poland, you know, you spoke to people and they knew, you know, a little bit of English, and I think in Belarus really, most people don't speak English, so you've got to find other ways of communicating. Well, we're finding on day 6 that it's a pretty tiring schedule. All the things that have to be done, the filming, catching trains on time, making sure that you even eat on time and do those things. It's a lot to fit in the time, so feeling a bit tired, but, you know, getting used to it as well. And we're on the train now. We're just heading to a town called Baranovichi in Belarus, and it's the site of the intersection of where the main train lines cross. But other than that, we don't know very much about it. The GPS that we've been using in the train to find out where we are shows us that we're about half an hour away, so we'll see what we find when we get there.
This beautiful snowy town was bustling and busy, with lots of people shopping in fabulous fur coats and hats. The women seemed very glamorous and perfectly dressed for the cold conditions. Heading relentlessly east, we boarded the train for Moscow, looking forward to its famous underground stations. They look like palaces or museums, decorated with sculptures, mosaics and chandeliers. The first line was completed in 1935, and now there are 12 lines, carrying 7 million passengers each day. It's one of the biggest and most efficient undergrounds in the world. I was blown away. At the Moscow Botanic Gardens, we caught up with Irina, who came to the UK and met our winter garden staff last year. She showed me palm trees and banana plants, very similar to those in Sunderland. We even got onion cake for our dinners, which none of us had ever tried before, and probably won't again.
Well, we're here in Red Square in Moscow and just arrived, so the first impressions are, what a fantastic and grand place. It's pretty huge. We've got this big courtyard type of area with lots of families all walking around enjoying like a Sunday afternoon out. Next, we are going this afternoon on the Trans-Siberian Railway. So the first time we've actually got onto that famous railway, and we're going to Ekaterinburg. So it's going to be about nearly 2 days on a train. So we've never done that before, so can't wait to get on and see what that's all about. But I'm going to miss Moscow. We've had a little look, so a little taster. Come back for more another time. Now that we're on the Trans-Siberian, it's been really nice because we had a lovely night's sleep with earplugs, because there's lots of rattling and banging and noise on the train, so you do need to kind of protect your ears from all that sound to be able to sleep. But we've had a lovely hostess called Olga, and we've been showing her our route and been helping her out when she gets off. at the stops. She has a job to do. And I was like, can I help? And she gets out this huge metal pole with a big spike on the end. And she's like giving it to me, and I'm like, oh, what do I do with this? And then she's showing me like, bash, bash, bash the metal underneath. And they're chipping the ice off the workings just to keep the train running smoothly. So she has to do that every time. And she was saying, muscles, you'll get your muscles by doing this. So I think I'll give her a hand next time, because it was really nice to actually do something practical and help out, really, help the Trans-Siberian keep running.
Yekaterinburg was the coldest place we visited on the route, at minus 17 degrees. The city lies to the east of the Ural Mountains, on the edge of Siberia, and is famous for its geology and gemstones. Our visit was hosted by SETI, a conservation charity who have links to charities in Sunderland.
Well, we're here standing in the memorial grounds for the Romanovs who were killed. They were the last Tsars in Russia. And so we're standing here amongst the snow and the trees and the memorials. And there's the same number of memorials as there are the people who were murdered. So each one is like a little church of its own. So we go inside and light a candle, and it's so, so beautiful. We've just heard the bells ringing in the background as well, and apparently this is where the bells are made in Yekaterinburg as well. So Larissa's showing us all around the site. It's a very, very beautiful place, very moving.
I loved the ice town, which is made every winter in the city. It has ice slides and rides for families, and it lasts for several months each year.
Tynemouth is lovely, people go surfing.
SETI took us to a museum to meet pupils in an after-school geography club, with other classes in art, dance, citizenship and engineering. The pupils were so enthusiastic about geology, taking me on a guided tour of the minerals. I wish I had more time to spend with them, but I still hope that we can make a link between our museums for the future. We left for Siberia late that night. I was glad for my thick Russian hat, as the so-called platforms offered very little protection from the freezing temperatures.
Travelling on the Trans-Siberian train, and we're doing the stretch between Yekaterinburg and Novosibirsk. So it's quite a long stretch, it's about 29 hours. So we slept overnight in our bunks. On the train at the minute, it's 21 degrees, so it's really toasty and warm in here. But outside it's probably about minus 10.
The city of Novosibirsk was founded only 100 years ago in 1893 as the new Trans-Siberian Railway crossed the River Ob. Part of that original bridge still survives in what is now Russia's third largest city. We were looked after by Ron, an ex-nuclear engineer and rock musician. He took us to the Novosibirsk Zoo, where we met an endangered Siberian tiger, wildcats and bears. It was not as cold here as I'd feared, only minus 10, very mild for the time of year. Our third train museum of the trip produced many interesting carriages. The children from a local school surrounded us with friendly smiles, fascinated with our mammoth journey. We bought tickets to see Mozart and Cellini at the famous Siberian Opera House, which looked spectacular in the evening light. We were not allowed to film during the performance, but Ron knew the director, and we were invited back next morning to film the orchestra and the ballerinas rehearsing.
So we're on the express train to Almaty. Express means that it does about 30 miles an hour and stops at every station that we pass by, every little village. So if you imagine getting from London to Newcastle, sort of, what would it take? Maybe a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours. Here it's going to take us a day. We spent an unusual couple of days in Almaty. I don't think I was very sure about what to expect from Kazakhstan. We saw lots of grassland and we saw some people herding cattle on horseback, and that's the impression that you had of Kazakhstan as being quite rural. And then we came into Almaty and it's like a really fast-moving, large population, westernised city. It was quite similar to Russia in some ways and different in other ways as well, but very westernised, or at least the parts that we saw. But I think because we weren't out on the streets ourselves, just kind of getting taken in the atmosphere, we got probably a distorted view of Almaty. To be honest, a little bit bemused, that's how I'm feeling today. There wasn't anything concrete that I took away from that. In fact, Kazakhstan's really more what we're seeing outside the train windows.
At the Kazakhstan-Chinese border, our carriage was hoisted off the tracks and a new bogie or set of wheels was slid into place. Russian trains run on a broad gauge track, whereas most railways of the world, including China's, use standard gauge tracks. Changing the bogies took a while, and we were held captive in our carriage with no loos for 8 hours. Once past the border, we were on the move again. A man on the train turned to me and said, "Welcome to China." It was a special moment, and it made me realise that we travelled nearly halfway across the world on our journey to Saigon. It was Valentine's Day in Urumqi, and as we headed out to the Grand Bazaar, we saw girls on the street selling roses. Inside the bazaar, people were selling jewellery, silks, leather goods and knives. A gang of 3 young boys followed us around the market, watching the camera equipment with curiosity. They were full of cheekiness, and we enjoyed their company. Urumqi is a Muslim city, and there are several mosques in the city centre with people dressed in black robes and hats. There are many different ethnic groups living in this border city, and we were told that most of the traders in the bazaar are the Uyghur people.
All around us, you can just see the snow is actually grey with soot and muck off all of the big power stations and the industry in this place. And the air is thick with like fog, but it's more than likely smog. And since we've been in this city, we've realised, you know, just how dirty it is. But these people have to live here every day. So a bit sad, really. I mean, these people are great. They've let us join in, really friendly, laughed at me, trying to do me dance. Really, I feel like I want to take them all away from here and give them some clean air. I'm just trying to decide if it's cooked enough to eat, or when you actually start eating it, or do you turn it down, or when do you add these bits of meat? And the people are trying to help us, but I think they assume that we know what we're doing, and in fact we have no idea. So I'm going to get a piece of this meat here and dunk it and see what happens. This? Aha. All of it? Cool. In it goes, in the pot. So, how long to eat?
Yes.
How long will it take? 5 minutes?
Yes.
5 minutes. Okay, that's great. Ah, it's already cooked. Yeah. Oh, brilliant, thank you. We're on the train and it's just about Chinese New Year time, so we've been warned to expect massive crowds and really busy train, and it's actually quite quiet on the train. We're sharing a cabin, but we've shared cabins in other trains that we've been on, but everyone on the train's got like really smiley faces. You can tell people are on their holidays, they're heading home to see their families, all the guards are smiling, everybody's got, you know, a really happy atmosphere. So it's a bit like leading up to Christmas at home, you know, Christmas Eve, everyone's got the good vibes on and, you know, all happy and can't wait for the holidays to start.
Lanzhou is a famous stop on the ancient Silk Route. The city lies beside the Yellow River, or Mother of China River. For thousands of years, people have traded silks and spices along this route from Europe to Asia. We crossed the Zhongshan Bridge over the Yellow River, which was covered in Chinese lanterns and lights for the Spring Festival celebrations.
We've arrived at this fantastic time of year, Chinese New Year. Tomorrow is the eve of Chinese New Year, and so we're here amongst these fantastic lanterns. And the lantern that I'm sort of resting on at the moment has the golden pig. It's actually the year of the pig this year in China, and the golden pig is even more fortuitous. Really good symbol of good luck for people who see it tonight. It's really beautiful, lovely to see. The only thing I can compare it to in Sunderland really is when we had the illuminations that used to be on Roker Seafront. So if you think about Blackpool and the sort of atmosphere there with the colourful lights and people walking around with their families, it's very similar to that.
We boarded the train at Lanzhou station, carrying food and decorations for a New Year's Eve party. We had a red Chinese lantern to put up in the carriage and firecrackers to let off for when we came to a station. The landscape out the window was beautiful in the fading sunlight, and as we headed north towards Mongolia, we saw dry mountains and terraced valleys in shades of yellow, brown and pink. There was a wonderful party atmosphere on the train, and we were invited to make the traditional Spring Festival dumplings with the cabin crew.
It's lush. Chili and soy sauce and the dumpling and perfect. Really, really lovely. And the best thing is, we helped to make them. Some of them, so if they all get poisoned. Wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Glad tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
The train arrived at Da Tong station and we headed into the city centre to see how people celebrated New Year's Day.
This city seems to be quite different from the ones that we visited, the last two, Urumqi and Lanzhou. Most of the buildings that we've seen around us so far, they're sort of single story or double story, but there's no big high rises here. You know, it's much more like a town than a city. That's my first impressions of that. There's a lot of people who have noticed us here already and they're crowding around us and making me laugh. This city is really a coal mining city, so it's going to be similar to how Sunderland was, I guess, when it was the height of the coal mining, sort of 17th century, 18th century into the 19th century. So I'm really curious, tomorrow we're going to go out and actually see some of these coal mining areas, some of the little villages as well, to see more traditional Chinese life.
Spring Festival or Chinese New Year is a very important festival here, similar to Christmas in Britain. Families have traditional reunion meals and enjoy firework displays. We saw lots of families in Da Tong Main Square wearing lucky red clothes and flying kites and having their pictures taken. It was lots of fun, but it made me wish that I was with my family.
And how much for a card?
Our guide, River, recommended that we visit the famous Yungang Caves, 16 kilometres west of Da Tong. The caves are over 1,500 years old and have over 50,000 carvings of Buddha. They're one of the most celebrated sites of Buddhist art in China. The 1 kilometre long grottos were started in 453 AD by the Northern Wei dynasty to atone for their persecution of the Buddhists. The carvings range from 2 centimetres to 17 metres high and of many varied styles, reflecting the different influences entering China via the Silk Road. We were invited to a traditional home in Yungang village. Chin and her mother and sister prepared us a special meal of Spring Festival dumplings and meat and noodle dishes. The home had one room, with a bed and a dressing table and a raised platform where we ate our meal. They had no running water or sanitation, and we were humbled that they had so little, but they were happy to share it with us. The rows of ugly houses and flats of the town are a stark contrast to the beautiful caves. I was curious to see a working coal mine, as all the mines in Sunderland were gone by the time I was old enough to understand their importance. The visitor centre was shut, so I collected a piece of coal to bring back to Sunderland for the museum collection. In a village outside Da Tong, we spotted a pig ruffling on a waste heap. It seemed like a lucky New Year pig, so we stopped to film it, hoping it would bring us good fortune. The short train ride from Da Tong to Beijing passed through stunning scenery.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much.
The Haoyuan Hotel in Beijing was an example of a traditional courtyard house with a gated entrance and one-storey buildings. The courtyard was a sanctuary of peace and quiet, with red lanterns, wind chimes, and bird cages hanging in the trees. This is until the fireworks go off at night, which sounds like gunfire.
I need 3 tickets for wall for adults. Ni hao. Ni hao. We're in the cable car and we're going up to the Great Wall of China, and we're in the Bedaling section. Bedaling section? Yes. So it's beautiful and sunny, so we're going to get up to the top the lazy way in the cable car, but it does mean that we'll get views all over the mountains.
The Great Wall of China is one of the wonders of the world, and I just couldn't imagine visiting China and not coming here. We could feel the history all around us, but also the elbows of the passing tourists.
Here we are standing on the Bedaling section of the Great Wall of China, and the sun is shining. It's probably over 20 degrees at the minute and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's lovely. I've been asked loads of times to have my photograph taken with Chinese families, which is kind of bizarre. It's a bit weird, but it feels quite good actually. Just so yay and cheese, and you have to put your peace sign up, and it's good. I have my very own I Climbed the Great Wall medal. Cheesy, I know, but can show my grandchildren, and I can say Jenny climbed the Great Wall on the 21st of February 2007, and there's a gorgeous picture on the back. And I went for the copper one instead of the gold because I thought it was a bit more aesthetically pleasing.
Buzzing from our walk on the Great Wall, we descended into the smog to try and find Beijing Train Museum.
So our journey's taken us from the northeast of England all the way across the world to China, and I'm standing next to the oldest surviving train in China. It's here, it's locomotive number 0, and it was made in the northeast of England, so I feel very, very proud to be standing next to it here in China. It has pride of place in the museum.
The last train that we were on, we really got to feel how Spring Festival is when people are travelling. It's just a free-for-all. People are just lying in the carriageways, sticking their feet underneath the bunks. So eventually it was an exhausting, horrendous trip. So when we travel in trains in Britain, like GNER or Virgin trains, and they're delayed, we'll have a good moan about it, but that's absolutely nothing in comparison to the poor people trying to travel around in China at this time of year.
We had been in China for 12 days, and in Guilin it seemed very different. Outside the temperature was rising all the time, and it was now over 15 degrees, so I could finally take off my red jacket and bare my arms. The warm air was delicious, and the view outside had been transformed from harsh deserts to lush green fields, palm trees and bananas.
Outside you can just see very wet fields, like paddy fields you would imagine. You know, you don't realise how much you like lust after greenery when you haven't had it for a while.
The karst limestone geology means that over thousands of years, acidic rainwater has eaten into the rock and formed extensive caves filled with stalactites and stalagmites, like those situated just to the south of Guilin.
I'm standing in the reed flute caves and it's really nice because all of the different formations have been given different names. So we've had things like giant mushroom stack and snowman.
And peaceful, with people farming small plots of land with vegetables and fruit trees.
Ni hao. What do you grow?
Most of the places that we've been to have been big cities, so it's been really nice to kind of come out and get away from the concrete, particularly as we're down south and the climate's just much milder and wetter, and all the plants that you can see around, the orchards, and there's lots of greenery here. Today we've seen people actually making the bamboo boats and floating them on the Lee River, and there's lots of bamboo growing all around, and it's really nice to see bamboo in its natural surroundings because most of the bamboo that I'm used to seeing is in the winter gardens in Sunderland.
The Guilin station was like a luxury hotel, with a marble pool full of koi carp in the centre. This train was a soft sleeper, which was such a contrast to the standing only and hard sleeper tickets we had experienced on the last two journeys. I was relieved to have my own space to sleep and place to store my bags.
So up to this point, the trip's been really planned and organised, quite deliberately so that we could get across China and through Spring Festival. But it's really nice now that we're heading to Vietnam and we've got a lot more freedom about, you know, how we actually plan the trains, the stop-offs on our way down to Ho Chi Minh City. So the last time I saw the beach was in Sunderland, so really looking forward to seeing the beach in Vietnam and plunging in the sand and the sea, making the most of the warm weather.
We left China and crossed the border into Vietnam in the early hours of the morning. It looked really different out of the train window. The houses were narrow and tall, and many were painted in bright colours with shuttered windows.
Well, good morning. I've arrived in Vietnam, which is our very last country on the trip. It's day 34. We're here in Hanoi, just got off the train, and it's so exciting to be in a new country again. We've been in China for about 2 weeks, and I mean, although China was amazing, we've been so quickly moving through countries before that, that it's just lovely to start off in a new country for our last leg of the adventure.
Hanoi is the capital city of Vietnam, with a population of 3 million people. In the old quarter, we saw the influence of French architecture, with tall, narrow buildings, with ornate balconies and wooden shutters. Hanoi is a tourist mecca, with souvenir shops, hotels and bars. Large signs advertise tourist trips around the city and beyond. Cyclo riders pedalled tourists from place to place in covered carriages. And the streets were humming with the sounds of motorbikes and scooters. I didn't like the idea of the cyclos. It made the Western tourists look lazy. Why couldn't they walk instead? It made me feel embarrassed. It was a culture shock to be the same as everyone else after being such a curiosity in China. I didn't like the change very much, but I loved Hanoi and the craziness around me. The weather during the 2 days we stayed in Hanoi followed a similar pattern. In the morning it rained heavily, and then it brightened up and got sunny in the afternoon. People wore huge waterproof capes on their bikes and scooters to keep them dry. I'm really enjoying the warm weather here. Even the rain's been a welcome change. I wish you could have seen it, you would have loved it. The train to Nha Trang was an older, clunky train, but the people on the train were great. An older lady in our carriage made friends with a lady from another carriage who'd taken an interest in us. They looked like sisters, and they sat together hand in hand. The slow pace of the train seemed to match the slow-moving scenes outside the window. Nha Trang was the last but one stop on this long journey, and I felt guilty that I didn't feel wildly excited to be so close to the destination. I realised that I would miss the excitement of the journey and not knowing what each day would bring. Ending the journey meant returning to reality and work, and my brain had really enjoyed the change of scene and company and time to think about myself. It had been 35 days since we'd left St Peter's Station in Sunderland, and we travelled over 9,000 miles. Heading south on the east side of Vietnam, we were soon going to see the South China Sea from the window, the first glimpse of sea since Sunderland.
Sure, I can't bring you down from $2? $2 seems a lot.
If you buy 3 or 4 and then a discount.
I'm sitting here on the Nha Trang beach next to the South China Sea, and the weather is beautiful. It's been a gorgeous, gorgeous sunny day, but this sea's a little bit warmer than the North Sea, and it's also a little bit bluer, more turquoise than the greyness of the North Sea. It's gorgeous. People are walking along with their families, and it feels really good to be here.
Before I visited Vietnam, my impression had been of a country ravaged by war, depicted in films such as Apocalypse Now. I looked for the legacy of the war, but I found instead a very different Vietnam. Rows of memorial plaques lined the road up to the Nha Trang Cathedral. These were from a nearby graveyard that was disinterred in 1988 to make way for a new railway station building. Overlooking the Kai River, the beautiful Po Nagar Cham Towers were built during the 13th to the 17th centuries. The site was a place of Hindu worship in the 2nd century, but is now a holy place for Chinese and Vietnamese Buddhists. We slid quietly out of Nha Trang on the last train of our trip.
I've just arrived off the express train from Nha Trang in Saigon now. We've got about 48 hours in this city to explore, and I can't believe that we've actually travelled 9,300 miles to get here. It's a really, really good feeling.
We're headed back into Saigon to see a traditional Vietnamese lacquer factory. It is such painstaking work, and one bowl can take 3 months to make, as there are many different stages to the process. We posted our very last blog before taking in the strikingly modern architecture and eerie quiet of the Reunification Palace.
Well, I'm very pleased to meet you. Very pleased to meet you.
Having carried it for 6 weeks, I finally presented the Sunderland book to the headmaster and the teacher of English at Binh Duong International School. We compared the heritage of the two cities.
Every day. Our seaside. This is the coast. This is Hilton Castle, the coal miners. This is Roker. Nice sand. All the way by bicycle. And they get to the end and it's Sunderland. And for you to find out about our life.
I talked to the pupils in the English class about the journey from Sunderland to Saigon, showing them maps and inviting them to ask me questions. I was quite nervous to be teaching again after so long, but there was such a lovely group that they put me at my ease.
And on the internet, so people can see it all over the world. So that is the purpose of the film. Okay. Thank you once again. Thank you for your help.
Our epic journey ended with a celebratory cocktail in the aptly named Saigon Saigon rooftop bar.
So now that we've travelled halfway around the world, there has to come a time to actually say goodbye to this amazing adventure that we've had. And as I look out over the rooftops of Saigon and see the sun setting, it's also quite nice to think that it's setting on our special adventure and our special time travelling through all these wonderful places. So there has to be a time to say goodbye, and I really can't think of a more appropriate one than this.
you.